Hello everyone, and welcome back to the next part of our tutorial for creating a stand and a journal or a notebook using digital paper collection from Vectoria Designs, which is called Vintage Library. As usual, you will be able to find all the links in the description box down below. We left off in the previous part at the point where we finished covering the stand with the designer papers from the paper collection, and I also cut out some of the ephemera elements from the digital paper sheets and added some of them to the front panel of the stand. I used some of the metal pieces here as well, just to add more interest to it. And I also used some really old round epoxy stickers that I had in my stash and added them to these spectacles, and I think it turned out so cool. It really adds a lot of interest to this project. They are 1 inch in diameter, these stickers, and when I purchased them they came like this on a plastic sheet with a very delicate plastic cover. So this is how these stickers look like, just in case you want to search for them. And again, they are 1 inch in diameter, which corresponds to 2.5 centimeters in size. Today we will work on the pages and the binding and the cover for our notebook that will go into this compartment of our stand. I already created 2 signatures, and according to my plan, at least for now, our notebook will have 3 signatures. The journal pages that you have in the pack are absolutely wonderful. Once again, with all the vintage images, they look amazing. When I printed them, I printed 2 pages on 1 sheet. So I have patterns and designs from both sides of the copy paper. And I separated them into groups of 4. So I had 3 groups of 4 double-sided pages. And I already trimmed the border from 2 groups of pages, and let me now show you what exactly I did there. We will work on this group of pages together. So first of all, not to cut each page separately and to save some time, I thought it will be nice just to stack the papers together and then use a stapler and staple the borders from all 4 sides. This will ensure that nothing shifts while we cut. So I will then take my self-healing mat here, and I will take a ruler and a craft knife, and I will take my time aligning the ruler nicely along the edge of the printed design, and I will cut each time, rotating this stack of 4 printed pages. I cut on 3 sides, and since my paper is not tea-dyed this time, I will leave one side stapled, and I will use my vintage photo distress ink just to go around the edges that I have trimmed so far and color the white edge of the paper sheets. And then I will trim off the fourth edge and trying not to move the whole stack too much, I will distress the last fourth side of my papers. And these are our pages. Even if some of the pages moved while you were trimming the white borders, you can easily fix that. For example, here I have a little white border showing, so it's an easy fix. I will just take my distress tool and will cover the white areas with the distress ink. But altogether, I think it should work. So yeah, okay, this step is now done. Now let's measure our pages. Each of my pages is roughly 9 3/4 by 7.5. I will now go ahead and fold each one of them in half. And I like to add tea-dyed paper sheets to the pages of my journals. We measured the printed pages. I have here 4 tea-dyed pages that I'm going to trim to the same size and fold them the same way we folded the printed pages. And now I will form a signature just by stacking these pages, making sure that I have one printed page and one plain tea-dyed page, one after another. So that's how I created my previous 2 signatures, and now we have 3 of them, exactly as we need in order to continue and bind them. My journal will have a hard spine, and I want to try a different kind of binding. That is, the principle is very similar to the bindings that you usually use in your journals, and the difference is that I want to add something like thin, let's call it that way. So we'll see how it goes. For the binding, I took a piece of craft cardstock, and it measures 5 1/4 by 7.5 in inches. I also drew guidelines on the back of this paper piece, and they are at 1 inch, 3 3/4, and at 6.5. You will have to score this paper piece, and let me tell you the score marks. In inches, they will be at 1 inch, 1 1/4, 1 5/8, 2 inches, 2 1/4, 2 5/8, 3 inches, 3 1/4, 3 5/8, 4 inches, and the last one here will be at 4 1/4. Once you score this piece, then as you can see, I distressed the top and the bottom edge of the paper, and I also folded the fins where there are 2 gassets 3/8 of an inch wide from both sides of that paper fold that I then went ahead and distressed on both sides. Okay, so we have here 3 folds that were distressed, and these will be the places where our 3 signatures will be attached to the spine of our future journal. Since I will sew my signatures to the binding piece, I want to ensure that they stay in place. I want to add a piece of fabric. This is just muslin fabric. I will add it to the back of my cardstock piece. But before that, let's talk about poking holes for our signatures. As you can see, I have here little dots in the places where I'm going to make holes using my poking tool, and they are at the intersection of the fold line and the guideline that we have created. Okay, so from the back I marked those dots, and I'm going to poke the holes in them now. Okay, and the last one. So you will see now that we have holes on the front, on the face of our cardstock piece. Okay, so next we will take this piece of fabric, and let me tell you that roughly it measures 4 inches wide. That means that it is about 10 centimeters wide. In length, right now it is 9 inches, let's say, or 22 centimeters. And I'm not cutting it yet. And as you can see, I just stored this piece of fabric from the bigger piece, and the edges are frayed and they're really delicate. I want them to slightly show at the top and at the bottom of the spine of my journal. That's roughly how much I want to show on this side. And on this side I will also cut maybe 3 millimeters or 1/8 of an inch away from the edge of the paper, and I will just start to cut, and then I will go ahead and tear this and remove the threads that don't want to stay on the fabric anymore. I really like the look of the torn edge of the fabric. It's so nice. Anyways, let's continue. We have this fabric piece right now, which is ready to be attached on the back of the cardstock piece for the spine. And I will just mark up to where I need to apply glue. That will not be seen anyways, so I will now use my liquid glue and stick the fabric to the paper. Just like so. Make sure that there are no wrinkles on the fabric. We want it as flat as possible. And what I forgot to say, that before you glue the fabric to the paper, make sure that you reinforce the folds. So the 3 folds that we talked about before will be mountain folds, and all the rest will be valleys. Okay, they will go in, and these mountain folds will go up. I really hope you understand what I mean. Okay, like this. Okay. Now I have a template here, and it's a simple one. It's just a piece of plain cardstock, and I have holes here in the same places where we poked the holes in our binding piece. They are at 1 inch, 3 3/4, and 6 1/2. I want to go ahead and poke these holes in each one of the signatures that I have prepared earlier. I will take my first signature and just hold the sides of the pages with the clips, and then I will put it in the punching cradle all the way to one of the side panels, and use the template in order to poke the holes where I need them to be. Now I'm ready to sew the first signature. I think I want to use this one. I'm ready to sew the first signature to the first fin on our spine. So I'm just using the upholstery thread, and this one is by Coates and Clark, and I take a little bit more than 2 heights of the page that I have here, and since it's already measured, let me cut 2 more for the second and the third signature. Alright, so I threaded 1 thread through my needle, and I will now start. Let me reinforce those holes so that I could see them on the back. Okay, and I will start from the first fin here. I will put my needle from the back of the binding piece to the front through the middle hole right now, and I will just clip the thread here so that it stays in place. After I threaded the thread through the middle hole of the spinal of the binding and the signature, I will thread it through the top hole and then go into the bottom hole in the spine and in the signatures. Okay, and then I will go back from the inside of the signature through the middle hole and through the middle hole in the spine, and here I can unclip the thread, and I will pull slightly by the tails of the thread and make sure that each one of the tails is on the opposite side of the thread that I have in the center, and then tie a double knot here, or even a triple knot, and cut off the excess of the threads. Okay, so the first signature now is attached, and what I want to do now is go ahead and fold the first fin that we have and stitch using a zigzag stitch on my sewing machine right along that first fin. If you don't have a sewing machine or don't want to use a sewing machine, you can go ahead and use fabric tack and glue both parts of that first fin down. So basically you will apply glue, if you are using the glue, 3/8 from that fold or from the thread, like this. You will apply the glue here and then glue it down together, and we will then continue to the next signature that will be attached to the second fin. And every time, as soon as I sew the signature to the binding, I will go ahead and use the zigzag stitch on my sewing machine to keep it closed together. This is how it looks. This is the back of that fin, and this is how the binding looks on the back for now. So you can see that we can open the pages nicely. The threads that we have here, you can either trim them off or tie a double knot and then trim them off. or leave them, whatever you prefer. I think I will go ahead and tie them in a knot and trim. So that's how you attach the remaining 2 signatures to the binding. And just make sure that they face the right direction when you stitch them to the binding. This was the first signature. This is the second signature, already sewn and attached to the spine. And now I will go ahead and attach the third. And the third signature is now attached as well. This is the look of the binding piece from the back. And this is how the pages flip and lay down on the front. I think I want to add another run of a zigzag stitch to these gassets of 1/4 of an inch wide. Yeah, I think I will go ahead and do that and get back to you. And I'm back. This is how the spine, now the binding, looks on the back. And this is what we have in between the signatures. Okay, so these will be further on attached to the cover of the journal. And the next thing I want us to do is measure. So this one, yeah, the spine of our future notebook should be 1 inch. Since we added fabric here, it is now 1 1/8 of an inch. And in centimeters, that will be 2.8. Okay. And I want now to determine what should be the size of the cover. Here are 2 covers and a piece for the spine. The covers measure 5 3/8 by 7 3/4 inches. You will need 2 pieces. The piece for the spine is 1 1/8 by 7 3/4. And to wrap our cover, I will use craft cardstock as usual. So if the covers are 7 3/4 of an inch tall, I will go ahead and prepare 2 pieces of cardstock, which are, they were just 2 letter size craft cardstock sheets. So I trimmed them on the long edge at 8 3/4. So they're 8 3/4 by 8 1/2. I will go ahead and use a piece of score tape to connect them together. Or even 2 strips, since I'm using the 1/4 of an inch tape here. I want an overlap to be bigger. Okay, so I will now glue them down together like this and use bone folder to burnish. Now I like to add guidelines about 1/2 inch away from the left hand side and the bottom edge of the long paper piece that I'm going to use as my cover. Okay, so now with the guidelines it will be easier to align the chipboard pieces, and I will also leave about 1/8 of an inch in between the cover and the spine, and here as well. If you want to measure, go ahead and just draw the next guideline, which will be an 1/8 of an inch, or 3 millimeters away from the edge of the chipboard here. I will go ahead and use the Tim Holtz ruler as my guide, because in thickness it is exactly a 1/8 of an inch. So let me glue all the pieces down to the craft cardstock and get back to you. I have glued the chipboard pieces to the craft cardstock, and now I will trim the excess paper 1/2 inch away from the edge of the chipboard on this side. And this way you will have 1/2 inch border all around the chipboard pieces, which is 1.3 centimeters. And we can now go ahead and first train our paper to fold at the top and at the bottom, as well as on the sides. I will use the corner mitering tool for trimming down the corners. You can go ahead and trim those in the way which is convenient for you. Now I will apply score tape around the edges of the chipboard pieces, and also along the edges of the covers, which are close to the spine, and on the edges of the spine, which are close to the covers. You know what? Let's do one strip here as well. Okay. We will start from wrapping the long sides first. Don't forget to use your bone folder to burnish. As a matter of fact, it could be nice to run a bit of wet glue here on the edge of the cover for getting that crisper edge that I hope you remember that we were talking about in the first part of the tutorial. I forgot to do it here, but let's make sure that we do it for the sides, for the shorter sides, I mean. Okay, so we will add the wet glue here, and then wrap that edge, and do the same for the opposite side. And this is what we have. I also distressed the edges of the cover, since I'm using craft cardstock and I'm going for a vintage look. I want to add 2 guidelines that will help me attach the whole binding piece with the signatures in the right spot on the cover. I will have those guidelines 1 inch away from the edges of the cover chipboard pieces that are close to the spine. So from this edge here, I'm measuring 1 inch away, or 2.5 centimeters. If you working in centimeters, okay, so the same thing on this side, 1 inch away from the edge of the cover. You can see that our cover is about 1/8 of an inch bigger than the binding piece at the top and at the bottom there. So I want you to pay attention at that. I will now remove the backing from the score tape. Actually, you know what? I will start only from the cover. So score tape is quite strong, and I think it will stick down to the fabric that we have on the back of the binding, but I will still go ahead and use some strong glue. You are welcome to use fabric tack for this step, and I will add it to the areas that are not covered with the score tape. And I will start now attaching my whole binding piece with the signatures to the cover of my journal. So I will attach it on one side first and leave it like this to dry for a couple of minutes before I continue. Okay, the glue dried a bit, and now when I'm moving the signatures to the left or to the right, this piece stays in place and doesn't move. This is what I need in order to continue. Okay, so right now what we will do is this. We will take the backing off the rest of the score tape, and I will add, first of all, strong glue in between the strips of the score tape on the spine, as well as do the rest of the area here, which is up to the guideline that we drew on the cover. Hold this whole construction with the binding and attach the flap, 1-inch flap, to the cover first, and hold it there for a while. Maybe you will want to flip your cover and hold it like, let me show you, like so. At a 90 degrees angle, and make sure that it sticks here to the back cover of your journal. And while you hold it in this position, run your finger in between the signatures on that gassets that you have between the fins to which each one of the signatures is attached. Okay? And press to make sure that it sticks to the spine. This is how it looks from the top and the bottom. Okay, let me go back and once again make sure that the whole piece stays in place. There's a bit of glue here. It's okay. It will be covered by another piece of paper there. What we have to ensure is the fact really that the whole piece is not moving and stays in place. In a couple more minutes, I will usually go again with my bone folder in those sections between the signatures and burnish there again. I hope it worked out for you, and we can move to embellishing the cover. Oh, by the way, the journal fits nicely into one of the compartments in our stand. It can fit in the middle section as well, and to the front section too, but I thought it would be better to keep it in the back. One more thing that you might want to do is to go ahead and distress those threads on the fabric to make sure that they match the general color scheme of our project. Now let me tell you something about my method of trial and error. There is this image included in your project pack, vintage library pack, I mean, and it's the cover of a vintage book. When I printed it just as it was, my printer gave this result to me. So the images are 5 inches by 6.5 or 12.7 by 16.5 in centimeters. So this printed version was not fitted to the frame while printing, and then I printed it once again, and then I got the image which was taller, but I think in terms of width it was about the same. So I decided to trim it down to the size that I needed and just add another layer of craft cardstock, distressed all around, and then I stitched that printed image of the vintage book cover to the craft cardstock. So I will give you my measurements, and you might want to print the image on your printer and see how it goes. But in my case, the pattern paper, this one of a book cover, in inches is 4 5/8 by 7, and the craft cardstock base is 5 1/8 by 7.5. So that's what I wanted to tell you about the printed images that I am going to use for the covers of my notebook. For the spine, I just cut a piece of this paper from the pack, and it measures 7.5 by 1, and then I decided to use this image of a pen from the project pack, which I trimmed a little bit down to be 1/2 inch wide by 5 inches long, and then I layered that on top of another craft cardstock piece, added some brads to this whole paper piece, and I'm going to use it on the spine of my book. I had this piece of leather that matched pretty nicely the tone on this image of a book cover from the project pack, and I thought that I will just layer that leather piece paired with a piece of muslin that I had also left from creating the spine on this book. And then I took this word journal. There's a bunch of different words included in the project pack, so I will now glue this whole piece to my cover, and then once again zigzag stitch all around this label to make sure that it stays in place. If you want to add metal pieces to this part of your cover, now would be a good time. If not, you can go ahead and glue this down to your cover right now. And from here, guys, you can take embellishing of your journal further to so many places. I didn't create anything super elaborate on the inside covers as well as on the pages of the whole journal, and you might have already seen the quick flip through in the beginning of our tutorial. I added here and there just a few decorative elements. On the inside cover, I just added a few pieces from the cut apart sheets, and I also showed them to you before. So I just want to give you, in case you wonder, the measurement for this piece of paper that covers both the front and the back side of the cover. and the size for that piece of paper is 5 1/8 by 7.5. And also, as I promised, I just want to show you the folio and the little accordion ephemera holder, and give you some measurements as well for those, in case you want to replicate them too. So first of all, for creating the folio, for example, I used file folders, green file folders. I got them in US from Staples, and the box is quite big, so I'm showing it to you this way. And the size, well, I don't know about the size, it doesn't say, but this is how the file folder looks like. I just trimmed the edges with this metal bar inside and used the rest of the file folder, and the score lines that are actually already there on the file folder come really handy when you create different books with quite soft covers, I would say, but for this specific purpose it wasn't a problem. So I just connected together, glued together a few pieces of the file folder to create something that looks like this, and I hope it is in frame right now. So the size of this area here, for example, of the cover is 5 3/8 by 6. And the size of the spine is 1 inch by 6. If you will have a look at the folio from the top, you will see that these inside panels, in my case, are shorter than the covers, and for that reason they kind of want to slide in, and I just wanted to say that I recommend to make these inside flaps either the same size as the covers, which means 5 3/8 by 6, or maybe only like 1/8 of an inch narrower. And I think then you will not have the same problem as I have here, and the book will stay completely like straight and neat and look like this and not like this. See here on this side. But anyways, if you fill it with lots of things, I think it can also solve the problem. In any case, you will have to play with it and experiment. So yeah, on the flaps here, on the inside flaps, I have added a pocket, and this pocket is included in the Vintage Library project pack. There are actually both of them, one in this color and one in the kind of bluish green. So I glued both of them to the opposite sides of the inside flaps of my folio, and I have created a few journaling cards using once again ephemera elements from the paper pack. Some more journaling cards, and here I just stapled this circle to the journaling card. Then when you flip, let's start from this side first. I created a big slide and added some twine here with the eyelets, and there is a pocket that holds again a journaling card in here. This can flip open, and then you can add some more journaling here or embellish it further. On this side I have a tag once again embellished with the papers from the paper pack and some more decorative elements from the ephemera cut apart sheets, including those spectacles that I used on the stand as well. I love them so much that I used them in a couple of places in this project. Okay, so there is a pocket in here that holds a tag, and then the pocket flips open. And here is just a piece of the tea-dyed paper that I stamped in a few places. And here's just a little notebook with selection of different pages, like dictionary pages, and some tea-dyed numerous kinds of papers which are in here, and even some leftovers from the printed sheets of the paper pack. So there is a belly band that holds this notebook in place, and I added at the bottom of the page a little stopper that is mostly decorative because the belly band holds this notebook in place quite securely anyways. Okay, then on the right side of our folio we have once again that same design with the flap that has a pocket and another tag that we have in the pocket with absolutely adorable small library cards that go into that library pocket, and some more ephemera elements, and of course the spectacles on the front of the pocket. Then you flip it open. Once again, there is that same tea-dyed paper with a few stamped images and another booklet with scrap paper pieces that is kept in place with the help of the belly band, and another slide with a pocket for a tag on the right hand side of the flap. The size of this flap is 5 by 6, and the gusset that you have here is 1/4 of an inch wide. That's the folio, and it goes to the middle compartment in my stand. The ephemera holder that goes into the front compartment here measures 4 by 5 inches, and the thickness of it is 1/2 inch. There are a few pockets in here, and each one of the pockets holds additional journaling cards from the paper pack that I still need to embellish. And probably the last measurement that I am going to give you is for the accordion pieces right here. So for each one of them, you will need a piece of craft cardstock, which is 3.5 by 6 inches. And on the long side, I scored it at every 1/2 inch. And then just glued the pieces of that file folder in between some of the folded areas to create the pockets. So that's the little holder that goes into the front compartment. That's the end of our tutorial. I truly hope that you enjoyed creating the stand and the journal together with me using papers, digital papers from Vectoria Designs. If you guys have any questions concerning this tutorial, please let me know. I will do my best to help. And check out my blog post. The link to it is also in the description box down below. You will find there the pictures of the finished project in case you want to have a better look at them. I will see you in the upcoming tutorials, and hopefully this is not the last tutorial that I create for you using the project packs from Vectoria Designs. Have a great day, guys, and bye!